We see a monk named Yu spiking his spear into the ground, trying to detect something. He pulls his spear out and confirms his suspicions. He has discovered that assassins are hiding around the mountain. He looks to his men and says, "The Qingchong sect is being invaded. We must find and eliminate all the assassins." Wool knows that he and the others are at a disadvantage. They decide to retreat and survive. The monks begin to spear random areas in the ground, hoping to find an assassin using their special abilities. But one of the monks gets too close, and the assassins leap into the air. They plan to scatter and regroup once they escape the encirclement. The monks are not going to let them go easily and pursue them. Yu throws his spear ferociously and hits one of the assassins. He calls for another spear and quickly kills another assassin. He takes another spear and gets another assassin. This is almost too easy for Yu. Wool's partners are falling like flies and Mola is the only assassin left. Yu makes his last throw and it's heading right for Wool. Wool catches the spear and throws it back. The spear flies past the other monks and it's heading right for Yu. As the monks turn to watch the spear fly past them, Wool takes this as his chance to attack the group of monks closest to him. The spear is heading to Yu so fast that it grazes his ear. This infuriates Yu and he orders them to hunt Wool down until he is dead. Wool is outnumbered now without his partners and decides to run away. As Wool runs for his life, he wonders how the monks knew they were hiding. He thinks someone may have leaked the information, but he is the only one who knew who their target was. It could have been the fourth sword, or one of his subordinates. They retreated before they were ambushed. The monks catch up to Wool and wound him with a spear. Wool falls down, but he struggles to get back up. He didn't spend 6 years underground to lose his life like this. Wool wonders if there was a conflict in the Blood Shadow group, or if the requester changed their mind. The only thing he knows for sure right now is that the Blood Shadow group has abandoned him. Wool reaches the end of the path and has to hide, but he is leaving a blood trail. As one of the monks tries to follow Wool's trail, Wool drops down from a tree and takes him out. He is forced to survive on his own with a group of monks chasing after him. With no other choice, Wool jumps into the river. He gets out of the water and finds a message on one of the stones. The message gives directions to a location 600 meters north. Wool follows the trail and sees another message with a shorter distance. Wool is closing in on the location. With the amount of blood on the rocks, Wool believes whoever wrote this code is badly injured. But in the distance, Wool hears people searching for him. Wool starts to wonder if these messages are a trap. He knows there are at least 7 different clans participating by the amount of uniforms they are wearing. Suddenly, Wool feels danger and falls down to avoid a strike. As he lays flat, he looks up and sees men. She didn't realize she was attacking Wool. She is happy to see him, but she is badly injured and collapses. Wool tries to catch her, but he can't with how much she is bleeding. He doesn't think she is going to make it. He asks where the others are, and she says most of them are dead. Wool asks about Yayo and Song, but Min says she doesn't know what happened to them because they all scattered. She remembers them taking charge and telling their group to run while they fought. They were leaders until the very end. Wool gets emotional as his friends are losing their lives. He lays Min down and tells her she is going to die soon. She knows, but she is happy she won't die alone. Wool asks her if she is scared to die and if she wants to live. Min says she wants to live and asks if Wool can save her. He says he can't and Min says that's why she is giving up. She knows her body is in bad shape. Min is just glad she won't have to die alone. She asks Wool if he will stay with her until the end. Holding back his tears, he says he will. Min says after everything they went through to survive, it's hard to believe this is how it ends. She wants to know who did this to them and why anyone would do this. She hopes whoever did this to them feels the pain she feels right now. Wool tells Min it was because of Wu Gun Sang. Min asks for clarification on what Wool meant by that. Wool says their target was Wu Gun Sang of the Qingchang sect. Someone requested the Blood Shadow group to kill Wu Gun Sang. That's why they were kidnapped and raised as assassins. And now that they are useless, they are trying to erase them from the plan. Wool tells her if he can survive, he can find out who ruined their lives. He plans to find them and take revenge, even if it's the last thing he does. Min can barely understand as she feels the end coming. She tells Wool that she wants him to survive for her dying wish. She wants Wool to say her name, her full name. He grants her wish, and she thanks him. Min just wanted to hear Wool call her name before she left. As Min's spirit leaves her body, Wool promises to get revenge on whoever did this to them. Palace. We see Gu reading the message. The fourth sword reports to Gu that the assassins will not be able to escape. As Gu reads the message, he says it's a waste to throw the assassins away after all that time. The assassins won't even be useful because Gu has received a message saying their objective is now void. The fourth sword asks if that means the palace is in danger. Gu says they won't be able to find this place. He thinks it will be best to wait there until the storm is over. Then the fourth sword asks if Gu really doesn't know who the requester is. Gu says he can find out, but there is a line to be respected. Gu is not worried as they were kind enough to send them a message. But then the fourth sword sees the message and he panics. The message was infused with tracking incense, and suddenly one of the walls is blown up. The palace is now under attack. The first sword tries to warn the attackers and tells them to retreat as they are no match, but they refuse to back down. The fourth sword tells Gu that they must retreat, but Gu says he can't go anywhere. They are here for him, and they won't let him escape. Gu says they crossed the line and he prepares to fight back. Gu charges at them and says they will be devoured if they bite. Gu calls for his forces to hold on a little more, but in the distance, Gu hears someone say, "No, you won't have that opportunity." An attack is directed towards Gu, but he is able to defend. He felt a surge of power and asked who that person was. The woman was offended that a lowly assassin wouldn't know her name. As she got closer, Gu recognized her as the life-ending toxic heart Jianghu. As Gu was about to ask if she was the requester, she stopped him and said that she would rip his tongue out if he said more. Gu figured it out and realized the requester was from the Emi sect. He regretted not investigating who the requester was. This choice had brought a disaster, but he refused to die. Jianghu was annoyed by Gu's hope and launched another attack. Gu defended again and fought back. Jianghu was impressed by Gu's martial art level. She was glad they were fighting in daylight, so Gu couldn't ambush them using the darkness of the night. She knew she had to kill him and everyone else in the Blood Shadow group. Jianghu sent one final blast at Gu, and he couldn't defend that one. He knew he was going to die and feared this was the end of the Blood Shadow group. He thought about the hard work he put into this group to rival the 100 Wrath Union, and this inspired him to keep fighting. He attacked Jianghu again, but then suddenly a third party joined in. He knew he was in trouble, and he couldn't withstand the attack. Gu fell down and the assassins cried out for their captain before getting speared. Jianghu turned to her master Ran and greeted her. Ran couldn't believe they had such a hard time killing these measly assassins. Jianghu apologized and said they fought back harder than expected. Gu cried out for Ran and asked how she could do this to him after requesting his group. Gu continued to cry and accused Ran of betrayal, but Ran had enough and quickly killed Gu. Ran acted confused, like she had no idea what Gu was talking about, and ordered her group to finish the rest. The next one to fall was the first sword. He dropped to the ground, yelling in pain. The first sword knew that ever since Ran became the leader, they had been increasing their forces at an alarming rate. He asked for the name of the woman who just sliced through him. She told him her name was Young. He said he heard that one of Ran's disciples had unfathomable talent, and it must be her. Young said those were exaggerated rumors. The first sword took his last breath and thought it was ironic that being an assassin for decades was no match for a disciple of the Emi sect. Young went to report to her sister that the first sword had been killed. Now we see the fourth sword being brought to Ran. Ran asked him how many assassins he took to the mountain. He didn't answer and asked why she wanted to know. She demanded the answer, but he said he didn't know. The fourth sword said even if he knew, he wouldn't tell her, especially not after everything she had done to his palace. Ran thought his stubbornness was cute and tortured him. She asked her question again, and the fourth sword said he took 28 assassins. Ran got what she needed and asked how many assassins had been killed on the mountain. The woman said 24 had been killed. Ran wanted the 4 remaining ones eliminated immediately. As the palace burned, Ran turned to Young and said her role was now more important than ever. Ran said she would send someone to the Qingchang sect to set a date as soon as this matter was dealt with. She also told Young to prepare her heart and body for the wedding. Ran tells Young that all of this is for the fate of the sect. Meanwhile, back on the mountain, we see Wool spying on the monks. Their security is tight at the entrance, so he plans to get in from the inside. He thinks if they want to die as natural enemies of the Jianghu, he will just become one, a natural enemy of the Jianghu. Inside their base, we see a monk getting ready to leave to collect herbs. As the monk walks in the forest alone, he is attacked and choked by Wool. He tries to ask Wool who he is, but Wool draws his sword on him. Wool injures him, and the monk wonders who would do such a thing on this mountain. Wool asks the monk if he is a disciple of the Qingchang sect. The disciple nods, and Wool lets him go, so he can ask him more questions. Wool asks for the disciple's name, and he says his name is Du. He is a third-generation disciple of the Qingchang sect. Wool asks Du what kind of man Wu Gunsang is. Du panics and asks if he is talking about senior brother Wu Gunsang, the Lone Star of Qingchang. Wool wants to know what Du meant by calling him the Lone Star of Qingchang. Du says senior brother Wu Gunsang is the greatest prospect that the Qingchang sect has ever produced. He mastered most of the Qing sect's martial arts and has reached a very high stage. Du has heard that former masters of the Qingchang sect have shown interest in him and are giving him their teachings. The Qingchang sect's prospect, Wool thinks to himself. Now he understands why they spent all that time training. Du asks Wool to spare his life since he has told him everything he knows, but when he turns around to look at Wool, he gasps. Wool is transforming, and Du is scared for his life. He has no idea what Wool is doing, and when he looks back at Wool again, he sees himself. Du is confused and tries to figure out what Wool is planning. Back at the monk's base, the guards at the front are surprised to see Du has returned so quickly. Du says he is back because he forgot something. Du walks through the entrance, and it feels like a new world to him, and that's because it is. Wool has morphed himself into the disciple Du. Wool makes his way through the base and searches for Wu Gunsang's residence. Wool quickly finds where Wu Gunsang lives in the Qingchang Palace. We see a meeting being held. The Qingchang sect leader is asking if the situation outside has settled down. His second-in-command, Jin, says the tracking of the assassins is almost over. The sect leader is still shocked that mere assassins dared to attack their sect. Jin says someone must have planned this. The sect leader asks if he knows who could have planned this, but Jin says they lack information, but he sent some disciples to gather information. Then the sect's greatest warrior chimes in and says this act is unforgivable. He wants to make sure nothing like this ever happens again. Jin assures him not to worry. Then the sect leader reminds everyone of the war of heaven and demons. In the moment of danger, when the Jianghu was about to be overrun by the Celestial Demon Union, the extraordinary martial artist Li Go formed the Providence Alliance. Those who opened their doors to participate, the Shaolin Temple, the Wudin sect, and the Mount Hua sect, accomplished great feats and regained their former glory. And those who sealed their doors and did not participate, such as the Qingchang sect and the Emi sect, only earned the empty name of Great Family of Sichuan and cannot compare to them in reality. The sect leader says, if they want to catch up to the others, they cannot hold back and must stay focused. Jin reassures everyone not to worry. He says if things go according to plan, they will be caught up in a few years. The sect's greatest warrior likes the sound of that and asks how Jin's son, Wu Gunsang, is doing. He knows he hasn't shown himself to the outside world at all. As far as they know, he has isolated himself to focus on his training with the thought of atonement. Jin apologizes for not being able to raise his own son. Well, the sect's greatest warrior says it's all right. It's understandable for a boy his age, and there's no need to apologize for something that has been resolved peacefully. Jin says he will make sure that he gets himself together. The sect's greatest warrior says no matter what society says, there's no denying that Wu Gunsang has true talent. He also says, if he is raised right, he won't be behind the successors of the three great sects. Then the sect leader intervenes and says he heard Jin has accepted the Emi sect's proposal of marriage for Wu Gunsang. Jin says that it's true. The sect leader says marriage with the Emi sect is not bad and asks if the bride is the disciple of Ran. Jin says that she is her youngest disciple. He also says there are rumors that she has both beauty and intelligence, not a bad match for Wu Gunsang. But he still has some concerns because of Ran. Ran is desperate to catch up to the Qingchang sect. If Wu Gunsang marries her youngest disciple, they may be the ones to be devoured. That's why Jin has rejected the proposal until now. But the sect's greatest warrior comforts him and says they have no choice. They can't keep being enemies with the Emi sect in such a small territory. Since Wu Gunsong is the only hope of the Qingchang sect, he is given very special care. Meanwhile, Wol is still outside Wu Gunsong's residence. It's his first time seeing the real thing, but the layout is exactly the same as the one from the underground cave. The front gate is locked, but Wol knows exactly how to break in. Wol jumps on the roof, but he hears two guys approaching and lies down. These two monks are upset that Wu Gunsang is using isolation training as an excuse to be alone with women. One of the monks wonders if one of their disciples is with Wu Gunsang, while the other is trying to keep him quiet. Wol is shocked to hear that Wu Gunsang brings women into the sect. It's unimaginable to be with a woman in the sword training hall. The two men leave, and Wol takes a moment to gather his thoughts. There's bound to be someone who's different on the inside wherever you go, he thinks. The night comes, and Wol is ready to make his next move. He runs along the building and breaks his way in. He can't find Wu Gunsang anywhere, though. Wol decides to crawl through the vents, hoping he will find a way to Wu. In another room, we see swords lying around, and under the vent in that room is a man lying with a woman. Wol looks through the vent and sees the man. It's Wu Gunsang. From the vent, Wol can tell that he is on a whole other level compared to Gu, the Blood Shadow Group captain. But he is still human, so Wol thinks if he hit the death pressure point, he will die. Wol lowers a rope from the vent and tries to wrap it around Wu, but Wu wakes up. Wol knows he has to act fast and pulls the rope. Wu is lifted up, but he cuts the rope with his hand. Wu faces Wol and asks who he is. Wol answers by drawing his blades. Wol attacks Wu, but Wu is not bothered. He blocks Wol's attack with 2 fingers. Wol is shocked by his power and Wu counterattacks. Wu doesn't stop there. He attacks again with full force. Wol defends, but he feels like he may faint from the energy he is using to block. He can't believe how someone can do all this with bare hands. Wol knows he is running out of time to escape. It will only get worse. Wol tries another attack with his blade, but Wu blocks it again with 2 fingers. Wu praises Wol's skills. Wu asks Wol who hired him, but Wol is too tired to answer. Wu laughs and asks if that girl's father sent him. Wol is confused. The story